I don't know if you guys are like me and you like to mess around with your builds, but sometimes you mess around with a build and you try to test something out and it just doesn't work out, but something else happens. Hello, I am Xarkun and this is World of Warships Legends. I was testing out the base French commander, Louis du Fournay, or whatever he's called, on the Kleber here. I've got Sims and Bay as inspirations, and I was trying to, I guess, make a little bit of a gunboat build with an extra fire chance from Fournay's skill set, as well as increase the high explosive alpha strike, but frankly, the gunboat build that I was going for with Fournay didn't really work out, and this was the only game I tried to test it in, and frankly, the test failed abysmally, and basically, we got ourselves into a rather sticky situation where we were playing quite recklessly, turned the game into hard mode for ourselves, and then turned around and helped our teammates, who aren't exactly random teammates, by the way, come back and bring this game back from the brink of a loss. You can see the guy pinging me over there. His name is Mr. Bigglesworth, Dr. Evil's cat, as we say. I've divisioned with him in the past before, and he's a pretty good player. He's in the Friesland. We're out here kind of spotting those ships for the benefit of our team, but we take a shot at the Wichita with our armor piercing. I think the shells ricochet off there, and we get spotted and take a little bit of damage from the Peter bag ration, which, not the end of the world, but probably we should not have shot there. The only reason we did is, again, because we were trying to test out the efficacy of the guns. But now we're turning around, since we've lost spot of the 3 enemy ships out here. We were the only ones really in a position to spot them, and we want to get eyes on them again for the benefit of our teammates. Plus, this time, maybe we will be able to deal some damage to one of the ships with our torpedoes. We've got the speed boost running. One thing about Du Fournay is that you can use the fully packed skill to get 2 speed boosts and 2 main battery reload boosters, which, again, this was in service to more of a gunboat build. But, of course, the downside of using fully packed is that you do not get to use unstoppable. I apologize for any noise in the background. They are trimming the grass around my apartment, and it's very loud and distracting. In any case, we've got torpedoes in the water. What was I saying about the reload booster, though? Oh yeah, you don't get to use unstoppable if you use fully packed, which means if your engine gets taken out, you're dead in the water. And that is why I never, ever, ever, ever recommend using any other legendary destroyer skill besides fully packed. There is nothing more valuable, in my opinion, in the legendary row of destroyer skills than unstoppable, because if you get your engine taken out and you're dead in the water, then you become a very, very easy target to hit. And that is not something you want to do. You want to have that unstoppable skill available to you in case you screw up and take too much fire and get your engine knocked out, particularly if you're in a destroyer like the Kleber with no smokescreen. Now, unfortunately, the torpedoes we launched at that Yamato did not quite have the range to actually hit him, and we're parked here shooting at the Peter Bagration, which might not be the most advisable thing, but it does have the benefit of enticing him to leave the cover of that island that he was holding on to, and that is going to prove to be a lethal mistake for him. One of our friendly battleships takes him out, and we don't end up taking too much damage in the process there. So now it's just the Yamato and the Wichita on this flank. We take a shot at the Yamato with the high explosive before we can even be seen. And this is the sequence of the game where we really sort of mess up here. We shoot again at the Yamato, allowing ourselves to be spotted. And maybe this isn't entirely the biggest mistake ever. We are sort of deliberately getting ourselves spotted in hopes that the Cleveland will charge around that island and run into our torpedoes. pretty good idea in theory, I suppose, but not if you're squaring off against, did I call it a Cleveland? Not if you're squaring off against a Wichita who knows what he's doing. Probably he was running the hydroacoustic search, and he saw the torpedoes coming from a mile away, so they were in no danger, really, of hitting him at all. And now we're sort of having a gunfight with a Wichita. And it was working out okay until the Wichita took out our engine, forced our damage control usage right there. We cannot afford to have a broken engine right in front of a Wichita. We've got another battleship pushing up toward this Wichita, and we've got a friendly destroyer in the base. Meanwhile, Mr. Bigglesworth in his Friesland is parked in front of our base, sort of in a position to defend it. You'll notice if you look on the, the eastern side of the minimap, there is the outline of an enemy destroyer pointed straight at our base, and Mr. Bigglesworth is in a great position to intercept that guy should he come into the base. Meanwhile, actually, we also have a cruiser inside of the friendly base, or the enemy base rather, who looks like he's about to ram or torpedo an enemy battleship, and in fact he torpedoes the enemy battleship, leaving only the destroyer and the cruiser in the enemy base. Another enemy destroyer pops up, though, to defend the base right behind the friendly destroyer, and I don't think things are going to work out well up there right now. In fact, my team is down a ship, and here I am aggressively pushing toward a Wichita, who is turning broadside, thinking that this is a good opportunity to use the reload booster to take the Wichita out and hopefully score some citadels, but the Wichita can be quite difficult to citadel, even though the AP on the Kleber is actually fantastic. Thankfully, due to the reload booster, we are able to take down the Wichita, but not before he does a crap ton of damage to us, lights us on fire, and breaks our engine, and our damage control party is still 13 seconds away from cooldown, so it's very possible that we're going to die here from this fire. Luckily, we're far enough away from the Yamato that we are able to go dark, so he isn't able to shoot us again, and our damage control comes up in the nick of time. Looks like we are taking some, I don't know if that was main gun fire or secondary fire from somebody behind us, but now we're on 229 hit points, so we can't really afford to be spotted again even one time due to our recklessness against the Wichita. We now have to play the remainder of this battle in what the experts call hard mode, which is not ideal, especially considering we only have one friendly battleship left floating, and me and Mr. Bigglesworth. That's it. Versus 2 enemy destroyers and 3 enemy battleships. So instead of trying to be the gunboat that we were trying to be earlier, we're instead going to be a torpedo boat, which ultimately might be a bit more of an effective way to play the Kleber, if anybody's wondering. Got torpedoes out there on the Yamato, but unfortunately I think they're going to miss. We launched them on the indicator, but frankly, we were looking around at the minimap so much that we weren't really paying attention. We didn't notice that the Yamato was accelerating very quickly indeed, and he accelerated right out of the path of those torpedoes. But we've got another Yamato and a Fletcher pushing in. We see the Fletcher is sailing in a perfectly straight line, so we send one set of torpedoes out toward him. This is something you can do sometimes, by the way, and it will often work out. If there is an enemy destroyer who is momentarily spotted, and he is sailing a straight course to get to some sort of objective, in this case the friendly base, well, oftentimes that destroyer is in a position to know that he's going to drop spot soon, and he's going to think that there's no reason to change his course. But that is going to be his downfall. We take him out for a devastating strike with those torpedoes. So, you know, in certain situations like that, it can be beneficial to send some torpedoes out the way of a destroyer. That is actually a very, very big help. That Fletcher would have posed a very real threat to Mr. Bigglesworth in his Friesland. You can see Mr. Bigglesworth is inside of our base, contesting it against an enemy Kansas who has entered the base. There's still one more destroyer to worry about, though, as well as this Yamato and the Kansas. But our torpedoes on the Yamato look pretty good. We get a flooding, and we've got more torpedoes ready to go. Yamato doesn't look like he is likely to change course. In other circumstances, we might have opened fire on him with our guns and then ducked around behind this island to drop spot. But since we are essentially a one-shot kill, even by a secondary, we don't want to take that risk, and we know the Yamato has had his damage con forced, so it should be on cooldown now, which means that any floods that these next torpedoes inflict are likely to be lethal. And we do get a flood on there. It's a perma-flood, but we don't actually need it because our other torpedo takes out the Yamato. So there's 3 kills, 90,000 damage done. Somewhere in the interim, the last remaining enemy destroyer went down. I don't know if Mr. Bigglesworth took him out. I assume so, since there is a smoke screen inside of our base that almost certainly belongs to that destroyer. And there are some torpedoes from the enemy destroyer on the left-hand side of the screen. Luckily, they don't hit Mr. Bigglesworth, and we're able to sit outside here, outside of Mr. Bigglesworth's smoke screen, as he shoots at this Kansas. You can see he's got him lit on fire, and he's slowly draining his hit points and constantly resetting the cap. But there are still 3 minutes left to go in this game, so the Kansas being on this cap is going to mean that eventually the enemy can overtake us on points. We need the Kansas either out of this cap, or the Kansas needs to die. He's slowing down in front of Mr. Bigglesworth. I assume he probably knows that the Friesland doesn't have torpedoes, and so he probably thinks he's relatively safe from any torpedo threats, but he's not. I am here, and his slowing down actually spelled his demise quite brutally. No way he's going to be able to dodge these Kleber torpedoes, and even though we played recklessly in the beginning of this game, we're able to turn around and help our teammate, Mr. Bigglesworth, bring this match home for a win. Mr. Bigglesworth is going to be number 1 on the leaderboard, followed by me. I think a pretty good game on both of our parts. Thanks, Mr. Bigglesworth, for being in that game. I don't think we would have won it without you. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.